Day 19 in the journal Journey of Learning, we will cover the domain, DNS, NTP, and remote access for the first switch in the access layer. As always, I start by planning, by creating a script to follow. Let's go over that script now. The first portion of the script is a domain name. This domain name was placed on all of our devices so that it can be identified properly. So all of our switches and routers uh, and the wireless access points, as well as the wireless controller, belong to the atlfusion.com domain. So, for instance, let's say this switch was named 01. It will be followed by the following atlfusion.com. And this helps to identify and validate that this is the correct device when you're dealing with SSL certificates and etc. You know how sometimes when you're in your web browser, you attempt to connect to something and it gives you a warning and it says you can proceed or either back, and it recommends that you go back. And so that's what happens. You've run into a certificate error that, hey, the certificate that we have does not necessarily match up with what we're seeing. Um, a lot of times, what I've seen is that it is really not the issue. It's just that the proper update or the certificate has expired. So this is what this is for, so that within the atlfusion.com domain, you will have all of your devices and they want to be validated. So this is a security measure. Next, we do not have DNS servers in this lab. So I'm using DNS servers on the internet. And we know that DNS stands for domain name system, so that it will translate names to IP addresses, or rather match them, so that when we utilize certain things on an internet to connect to something, besides using the IP address, which is very difficult to remember, if we just use the name, it will match that name to the proper IP address and take us to that address or that resource. Last is NTP. So I'm going to use an online or internet-based NTP server. And this is our network time protocol. So I'm going to allow the device to get its time and date from the internet so it can stay synced. So let's copy and paste that into this device. Go into config mode. And you see it found it. It said okay. Now, what was I talking about with the domain name? Now, let's do this. Let's say we want to go to, let's say we want to ping. I'm sorry if I spelled that correctly. Microsoft.com. I don't know the IP address of Microsoft.com by memory, so but I do know the name. So let's just try that. Okay, so Microsoft.com actually may have its protocol to respond to pings turned off, and that was actually a very good example. Let's try BBC.com. He responded. So they allow their server to respond to pings. And that was actually a very good example. So if you try to ping something and it does not work, just remember, hey, they may have that turned off, so it may not be responding. Let's move forward. We need to generate crypto keys so that we can utilize SSH for our remote access. Yes. And we want to use SSH version 2, more secure version. Let's clear the screen so that we can see. Last but not least, let's also configure our first console port. So we wanted to time out within 90 seconds if you are idle. We're going to place a password so that no one can just come and connect their console port or console cable and start working with the switch or changing things. Log in synchronous. We don't want the feedback that we see on the screen breaking up what we're typing. It becomes very confusing. And then we're going to require that you log in. And now then that is actually your local access. Console cable is local access. Next, the VTY lines. This is the remote access. Remember, we have 16 lines from 0 to 15. That's 16 lines. It means 16 simultaneous connections. We are going to time that out, that if you are connecting other than console, it's remote. And so we're going to time you out after 90 seconds of inactivity. We're going to require a password. Here is the password. That password will be encrypted because we've already configured the device to do that. Log in local. You will be using SSH in order to do so. And that's for the first 5 lines. For the remainder lines, we are doing the same exact thing here. Same exact. Let's take that and let's copy and paste. And so there you have it. Take a look here. It has the time there. Let's see if we can show that. It's automatically getting the time from the internet, and that is because of this NTP configuration here. And that'll do it. Thank you. Remember to always use write memory and copy run start to save your configuration.